Very happy to be here, more so because I see very close friends from my past here, and I'm encouraged by their continued interest in issues other than foreign and defense policy. And, I've been asked to speak on future-proofing India as the world's sustainable manufacturing hub. Now, I don't know what future-proofing is, but if I think it means what I think it means, then let me say that there are two issues to this which I would take as a given. One is that India as a manufacturing hub is something that we are witnessing in progress. I think, as is well known, the decline in manufacturing as a part of our overall GDP was witnessed, and to our regret, it continued to decline, both of manufacturing and agriculture. But I think that process is now slowly but surely being reversed. And I think we are looking at taking manufacturing from the current levels to about 25% of our GDP. That is the objective. And to talk of an increase from 16-17%, it is 17% now, I'm told that's the latest figure, to 25% on a rising GDP. I think that is the most significant part of what we are dealing with. Today, at 17% of GDP, the economy employs 27.3 million workers in the manufacturing sector. There are two or three processes which are underway autonomously. One is that the share of manufacturing, that's the more evident part of what is happening. But I think a host of policy tweaks are making that possible. Let me start with a small example from my childhood, if I may say that. You know, when people grow old, they like to tell old stories. When I went on a posting to Geneva in 1981, and I was preparing myself for a first secretary's job in the Commerce Ministry, my briefing then was on how we had to face trade policy measures from the world's largest economy in something as basic as what are called industrial fasteners and sanitary castings, which is manhole covers. You know, if you build a road and you have a drain there, then you cover it. Very basic steel work. That, in 1981, was roughly the state of our manufacturing sector, and just because we were beginning to rise a little, we were faced with countervailing duties for entry into the American market. Why was that? For the simple reason that they had just finished what is called the Tokyo Round of Multilateral Trade Negotiations. And one of the Tokyo Round codes which had been negotiated, the Subsidies and Countervailing Measures Code, it had a provision that you would get the benefit of an injury test for your exports into the American markets, provided you did N number of things, 1, 2, 3. And one of them was to sign a side letter with them to ensure that you would not do this, that, and the other. Now, if you have an understanding of basic market economics, you would know that there is no way industrial fasteners and manhole covers exports from India would ever cause injury to the American market. So the injury test was required, otherwise you would get countervailing duties. And you know, good hard negotiators that we are, we decided to take them to the dispute settlement machinery, and they knew they were going to lose the case, so they signed an agreement with us, or an understanding, that we could continue to subsidize our exports, provided they met our competitive and development needs. That was 1981. Now, fast forward from those manhole covers and sanitary castings, today we are the second largest producer of steel, 125 million tons in 2022. We are the second largest producer of cement, 545 million tons in 2022. We are the second largest producer of coal, second largest construction of built environment, fourth largest railway network, second largest road network, largest producer of two-wheelers, fourth largest producer of four-wheelers, second largest textile producers. And I asked my young friends who do the research for me, I said, why are you confining all this to the manufacturing sector? He said, because most of your audience is going to be people who are associated with the manufacturing sector. But if you look elsewhere, look at the agricultural sector. I mean, most of us in our long tenures in the foreign service, we've grown up with India being projected as a net food importer. Today, you export 40% of the world's rice. And if you decide, for some reason, to do with your domestic imperatives, to, let's say, decide that there is a benchmark of $1,200 a ton for one of those rice, I mean, you get criticism in Geneva, in the World Trade Organization, by everybody. So you've gone from being marginal players in all that to being a major player. But that has also been brought about because of some very intelligent policy tweaks. I was talking to you about the subsidies that were given to industrial fasteners and sanitary castings of manhole covers. It came from a scheme called the Cash Compensatory Support Scheme. The Cash Compensatory Support Scheme was a restitution of indirect taxes which a product bore for export, and if the product was exported, you would give the exporter the CCS value of the indirect taxes back. Now, to simplify that in layman's language, what it meant was anybody who was doing some export would come and apply for CCS. And since we ran systems which were reasonably flawed, I'm choosing my words very carefully. If you knew somebody in the export organization, अरे हमारे भी CCS का अर्जी डाल दो, and it went. That was a generally available subsidy. And your exports went nowhere. Today, I can tell you with a great degree of confidence that when we did away with those generally available subsidies and we came in with what is called the performance-linked incentives, or the PLI, our foreign direct investment into the manufacturing sector after the introduction of the PLI has gone up by 76%. 76% increase in the FDI as a result of the PLI scheme. Why? Because the PLI scheme is specific, it's targeted. I think we started off with 12 industries or so, I don't know where they are now. There was, as a result of that, I'm giving you one example, a 20% value addition in mobile manufacturing within a period of 3 years and a 139% increase in exports of smartphones. In other words, and forgive me if I'm using very hard language, something which was a large scheme making for leaks, making for wastage, was replaced by something which cost less and is far more specific and targeted, and the sectors which are under the PLI, the results are there for everyone to see. There's sudden growth in manufacturing and exports. Now you come to some of the other things that have been done, and I can't too easily get away from the two ministries I'm associated with. If you look at the entire urban spread, in the 10 years between 2004 and 2014, the cumulative expenditure on all the urban schemes of the government, then government, put together came to a sum of 1,57,000 crores. 1,57,000 crores over 10 years. When the Prime Minister assumed office in May 2014 and our urban scheme started in June of 2015, in the 8 years since then, the cumulative spend on all these urban schemes has come from 1,57,000 crores to 19 lakh crores. It is about a 10 or 11 time, 11, 12, 13 times increase. I want to take you to another piece of statistic which should give us some idea. When in Mr. Vajpayee's time we started urban transport in the form of the metro, the start was very modest. Today we have something like 870 kilometers of metro network operational, and we have another 960 plus kilometers of metro networks under construction. What that means is that when this is through, we would have, and this is going to take only another year and a half or so, we would have moved from being the 5th largest metro system in the world, overtaking Japan, Korea, and the United States, and we will have the world's 2nd largest metro network operational after China. The Chinese started much earlier, and their cities are also so situated. Some of this metro is also interstate transport, but we'll be progressing way ahead of all these other countries. I want to take a minute or two on the energy sector. Something that not many people know, but every morning, or rather during the course of the day, something like 60 million people go to the petrol pump every day to tank up. Whether you have a 2-wheeler, a 3-wheeler, or a 4-wheeler. Our daily consumption of crude oil, which is refined in our refineries, and I'll come to that in a minute, is about 5 million barrels in a day. Our current refining capacity is about 252 million metric tons per annum, but it's slowly increasing to 300, and the Prime Minister likes to use a figure of 450. I'm a little more modest. I said, well, 400 million metric tons per annum, which will make us what, the world's 2nd largest refiner? Our biofuels blending, and I say this again with a degree of satisfaction, you know, when the producers, whose sovereign right it is to determine how much oil they want to produce or release into the market, decide that they, and if you ask them, you know, the price is too high, they'll say, oh, well, we don't deal with price, we only deal with quantity we release. As if the quantity you release and the price are unrelated. To which I always say, be my guest. Because the more the cost of fossil fuel goes up, the faster will be our transition to green energy. In that particular year, when fossil fuel prices were very high, we managed to retain a semblance of normalcy. In fact, when prices were going up by 70-80% in our neighborhood, 40-50% in North America, our prices of petrol actually came down 5%. Our biofuels blending was 1.4%, despite all the efforts we made in the 2004 and 14 period. We had a target of 10% blending by 2022. We were able to do it 5 months in advance. We have a target of 20% blending by 2030. We are going to do it 5 years in advance by 2025. And our biofuel blending has saved us what? About 90,000 crores, which we have been able to pay our farmers as a result. So I'm going to conclude by making 2 or 3 overall submissions. One, that the Indian economy, which was the 10th largest in 2014, is the 5th largest today. It's not just going to be amongst the top 3 economies in 2027. I used to have a favorite comment when I was a professional diplomat, and I see an old friendship, I might remember it. I used to say, India will grow at a certain percentage point, even if the government gets everything wrong. But that's the strength of India, because there are people, the ingenuity, etc. But I think 2 or 3 things that have happened is that the fruits of economic development and the co-opting of our population in that effort through a number of things, digital payments is a case in point. I did some mischievous tweeting the other day. There was a very learned finance minister whom I know very well. We took out an old tweet of his. He said, "How will digital payments work in India? There's no electricity, there's no this, no that." And he made the mistake of repeating it 3 days before. The figures for August came. And what did we have? 10 billion as a figure. So my submission to you is we'll not just be among the top 3 economies in the world, but we have something far more going for us, which is that the Indian ingenuity, and that Indian ingenuity is what produces, I think, starting with a very good home-based value system, education, and then you get these guys going abroad. So my better half sent me a list of 25 CEOs of large American corporations, and I said, "Hey, galti hai." The head of Honeywell, Vimal Kapoor, is a friend of mine, should have been included. So, it's mind-boggling if you see what is being done outside. I don't want to go to what's being happening in Silicon Valley, etc. If you look at the number of startups here, the figure now is in lakhs. But if you look at the unicorns which we are producing, I think that provides a picture. So my first point in conclusion is that the India story has not only arrived, it is now gaining momentum. And to be in the top 3 economies, now nobody questions it. When I first talked of a $5 trillion, $10 trillion economy, I had all kinds of guys in the past tense saying, the guy is, dreaming. Now the statistics are, I think, who was it? Ernst & Young, who said that by 2040, India will be a $26 trillion economy. Our real estate sector, and I'm talking about that because I have to go from here to speak on real estate, is going to be a $1 trillion economy in a short period of time. From $200 billion now in 21, I think. $200 billion in 21 to a $1 trillion economy in another couple of years from now. So my first conclusion is, this is a different India, and this is an India which has arrived. Number one. Why has this happened? I'm not going to give you a political thing that I'm better than you and you are better than the guy before. No. The fact of the matter is, if you take the right policy decisions at the right point of time and you're able to utilize the potential. I'll just give you one example. I found it amazing when I was appointed to the Housing and Urban Affairs Ministry that we were the only country in the world which for 70 years of our existence did not have a regulator in the real estate sector. And real estate, as I told you, is going to be a $1 trillion economy in a few years' time, but we didn't have a regulator. What it effectively meant is, and I was talking to these young ladies here, people used to start projects, they would advertise projects. Unsuspecting people, like many of us sitting here, would not read the fine print. We would give money, the project would develop, and the guy, instead of utilizing the money from the unsuspecting home buyers, would invest it in a land bank. And then everybody invested in the land bank, and then what gave you 10 times the return or 20 times the return went flat. What happened after that? Well, started defaulting. No, we brought in RERA, a very simple amendment. If you have to start a project, 70% of the money you collect has to go into an escrow account for that project per se. Immediately problem over. This did not require rocket science in terms of understanding, it did require a little bit of integrity to go there. And I can share with you that even when RERA was being introduced, there were enough people in our system, I don't want to take names, who were saying it's too little, too late, why do we do things? And I became Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs, I think 3rd September 2017. First case I had to face was a large number of legal notices which came, and the Honorable Supreme Court directed them to the Mumbai High Court for disposal. People said, what happens if RERA gets knocked off? I said, I have sufficient faith in the judiciary to be 100% sure RERA will not get knocked off. And lo and behold, RERA became law after a big fight. And today, we are only dealing with the residual problems around Delhi, hence the Amitabh Kant Committee, etc., which we are working on. So I want to conclude by saying India, a country which is not only arrived but on the move. I could have mentioned the National Logistics Policy 2022. I could have mentioned 10,000 bio-input research centers, electronic system design and manufacturing, scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electronic components, tenders issued by X, Y, and Z. But I think that's all unnecessary. And I can say with confidence, I deal with two ministries which have a fairly large imprint in terms of external exposure, that no matter which sector in the world you are, automobile manufacturer, we have a biofuels alliance which is going to, we are already beginning to see within a few days of its establishment where the takeoff is. No matter what you're dealing with, real estate, people want to come and invest here. You want to deal with automobiles, we are already amongst the top manufacturers in the world. You want to deal with electric vehicles, and by the way, we also had the start of 2 green hydrogen fuel cell buses the other day, and the IOCL chairman has promised me 15 by the end of December. So, this is a transition which is deeply entrenched and which is at the takeoff point, and it's already gathering momentum. Thank you very much. I apologize for speaking a little longer than I had intended to, but since I was, I think, one of your last speakers of the day, have I kept anybody waiting? No, thank you very much. So I feel less guilty. Thank you.